No one was like Zach. Zach was sort of I don't know, like a different guy. I don't know. He'd look at him and he would just do something ridiculously stupid or something, and you just laugh. And there's no one really like him. There was people on fire for God, but still then, I'd say he was still leagues above in his faith. That's what it felt like to me anyway.
I think when we were around him a lot, like, you got the confidence that he had.
Yeah.
Like, that was like infectious. Like, beforehand I would never step out and pray for somebody, but like, he'd be like, no, you got to do this, man. Like, you got to share this. And everywhere we walk, it was just always infectious. So I'd always grow with him. Yeah.
I used to go to school with Zach. Yeah. So, yeah, like we kind of used to friends of friends type of thing. We used to get the same bus, that type of stuff. And then when we grew up, I didn't know him like real well when he was a Christian, but like these guys were close with him. They knew him when he had his conversion and, you know, going hard for the Lord and hearing all these stories about him and his death. And I remember when I was with my other best mate, he passed away now. He said, oh no, like Zach, he passed away, you know, like he seen it on his phone, like it come up, and he got bitten by a shark, and it was just like tragic. Like he's pretty well known around the whole community, and like, you know, one of the boys, Macquarie boys.
What was that moment like for you?
It was tragic. Like it's like you lost someone, you know, like a young person in the community, you know, like obviously, yeah, like even though we wasn't hanging out every day, like we still had that, you know, that effect, you know, you still felt that. And yeah. So yeah, then after that...
Do you remember where you were?
Yeah, I was at my friend's place, yeah. And we was there and was just, yeah, hanging out. I think I was only 2013 it was. Yeah, I was just finishing school during that time, so yeah. And then not long after that, probably about a year later, a few months later actually, I become a Christian. That same year, around the same time, yeah. And that's when, yeah, connected with these fellas, and there's a big walk, big impact on my walk, and joining You for Christ and that type of stuff. Yeah. That next year after he passed away, like not until I met a lot of these guys, yeah, they started to tell me how he started it and listened to his testimony and his story, and yeah. But that was very encouraging, like really encouraging, even with my faith and being involved in that moment, you know. All these young people on fire and me just being a new Christian, and yeah, what a good environment to be around that time, you know.
Like you, I didn't know Zach that well. I was 13, so it was like, you know, I was from a Christian home, going to a Presbyterian church, so very different to Zach's sort of the way Zach knew Jesus and worshipped Jesus. I believe the people in my church knew Jesus, but they're faithful followers, but their worship is different, and everyone's worship is different. But yeah, coming from a Presbyterian church, coming to the school, into the Bible study, and there's Zach leading it all, and he's just like insane. Like I'm like, who is this guy? Like this is weird. What have I walked into? And it was just so cool because he was young, he was 19, and he was so on fire. And to see someone actually choose Christ for themselves, not just because their parents go to church and drag them along all the time. And so, you know, I went to that Bible study that whole year, and that really impacted my life, seeing people actually take Christ for real, like, and Jesus being like their best friend. And I just didn't understand that first. And I remember thinking, is he really that cool? Like, I'm from a Christian family, but is he really, like, I don't know, is Jesus really that worth getting excited over, or is it just a bit of hype? And Zach passed away at the end of that year, and I remember when I heard about it, I was talking to one of my friends on Skype, and she told me as she found out, and I just kind of was in shock. And you know, I didn't know him too much, but like apart from the Bible study, I went to a different church to him. but it was still such a shock because Zach was like the first person I saw who was just on fire as a young person for Christ in that way. And I'd seen a lot of faithful elderly people, but to see young people was just something even different that impacted my life so much.
I reckon the only person for me who's been like Zach, or like a reflection of Zach, was Brad. When Brad first got saved, he was just talking about everyone about Jesus. Like, we couldn't like go out to the movies and go home without him talking to like 3 different people about Jesus and trying to pray for them, and like that infectious evangelical spirit that Zach had, I've seen that in Brad. Yeah.
You couldn't walk down the street with Brad without 100 people being like delivered or like healed or something.
But I also seen that in these young followers too. in
Yeah,
their group,
definitely.
You know, it
Jake,
was
you were
infectious. And
the way you
trying to
and
come
Zach
through
walked
these followers
together
as well,
was
you know, all of
amazing.
us.
I think you actually helped him mature in his faith a lot.
Yeah, we did a School of the Spirit together for 2 years, and that was all about homework, which was about going out into the public and talking to people about Jesus and praying for people. And they had something called the chicken line, which is like on the big properties in the middle of WA where they can't afford to put fences around them because they're so big. They used to paint lines on the ground, a red line, and the cows had never seen a red line in the dirt before, and they were scared of it, and they never used to walk over it. So it was like a cheap fence, and that was like our mantra, I guess, is like, who's going to be the one that steps over the chicken line? Because as soon as one cow does it, all the other cows know, oh, he's over there, he got over there fine, so we'll do it. And Zach and I were like, when we were doing that evangelical stuff and praying for people and trying to heal people, we would be pushing each other over the chicken line. And yeah, we saw heaps of cool stuff happen from that, and a lot of people touched. I remember one time in the Tari service station, it was like we used to do dares, like it was each other's turn to dare each other to do something across the chicken line. And he dared me to get up on the table in the middle of the big food court at the Tari service station and tell everyone that Jesus loved them. And I so didn't want to do it. Like, I was so embarrassed. But I did, because he was like, come on, Jake, you got to cross that chicken line. So yeah, I did. And people came up to me after and was like, oh, I was really touched by that. So you just would never know until you do it. I remember when I heard that Zach died, Jacayla actually told me about it. I was actually snorkeling at the time on Magnetic Island. I was doing my last teaching prac up in Townsville. And I had called him a bit earlier, a week earlier, and I got a call. I just got out of the water, and I'd just seen a shark too, which is crazy. And then I got a call that we didn't really have much service on the island, but Jacayla called me and told me, and it was pretty heartbreaking. And I had to like try and get back to the hostel and get the shuttle back to the ferry, and the ferry back to the mainland, and the next flight out back home. And I still missed the paddle out, but yeah, it was just out of the blue. No one expected that would happen. No one saw that coming. And yeah, it broke me quite hard, because I was trying to stay strong for all the youth kids, and I never really grieved until like months after. I mean, I cried the whole way home from Townsville, but while I was in port, I was like that strong youth leader kind of guy. And yeah, I think he left a huge hole in our friendship group, and he left a hole with me in terms of a best mate that loves Jesus. No one really filled that hole for a long time. And I guess I really haven't had that person pushing me on in my faith since Zach died. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I was to say one thing about Zach, I'd probably say he was obsessed with Jesus. I mean, he was always a pretty obsessive person with things. Like with surfing, when he wanted to surf, he was going to surf. Like I remember he bombed Matthew Flinder's hill, just that big hill in Lighthouse, and he broke his leg. I fractured it, I think, fractured it, and he had a cast on his leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matthew Flinders on a penny board.
Yeah. And he came off, and he fractured his leg, just smashed himself, and then he got a cast on everything. And then a few weeks later, we were at Christian Surfers, and the waves were pumping, and he wanted to go for a surf because the surf was good, and so he prays for his leg and cuts it off and goes out for a surf. And but yeah, he was pretty obsessive with everything.
There's no way it was you.
Yeah.
He just wanted to go surfing.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
How is his leg?
It was
He
alright.
was sore after.
Yeah, it was sore afterwards.
I
Yeah.
remember he went down Matthew Flinders Drive again with the cast on his leg.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Actually,
like-
and it was in like he had
Yeah.
like a bowler's hat on and a dressing gown on.
Yeah.
And like zinc on
He
his
had a
face.
dressing gown and crutches.
Yeah.
He does
So
have a
funny.
photo of that, eh?
Yeah, there's photos of
But
that.
there's a photo of him coming down the hill too.
Is there really?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a picture of the board on one side of the street and he's on the other side of the street.
Yeah. It was hectic. But yeah, he was just obsessed, I reckon. Like, and when he found Jesus, that was his new obsession, and until he died, that was like all he was obsessed with.
Yeah.
Even like I remember like living with him. I remember honestly watching maybe TV with him like 3 times, like barely ever. He just wasn't into watching TV or things that just I guess distracted you like that. He'd rather like pray or fellowship, as he'd always call hanging out, fellowshipping and stuff. And yeah, even just things like, I don't know, it'd be Friday night and he'd be like, oh, what do you want to do? Like I remember this one time with a friend of ours, Kane, and he said he felt like God wanted us to go into town. We had no way to get in or back, we had no money. And he had the idea to get the courtesy bus from up at the bar in, but he said, I don't know how we're going to get home, but God's going to get us home. And we got the courtesy bus in. Literally as we walked into the Macquarie hotel, we saw 2 people that he knew, and then for the next like 3-4 hours we just sat there and he spoke to them about Jesus. And those boys too were like going out to get drunk, and they only had the 1 beer and just sat there and just listened to him talk about Jesus for hours, man. And then those boys ended up saying, oh, how are you boys getting home? Like you can get in the bus sort of thing. And we got home, of course. But yeah, like he'd rather do stuff like that than I guess what everyone else wants to do. He was just obsessed with it. Yeah.
He was happy to be amongst it, but he knew what his agenda was, sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. He'd always try to find a segue into talking about Jesus. Always. Like, he'd love when people would ask him what he's been doing. Because he'd be able to be like, oh, I've been doing YFC, been, going into schools, doing Bible studies, been going over WA, doing mission trips, all that sort of stuff. Because, yeah, he knew he'd be able to talk about Jesus. So. Yeah, his favourite verse was perfect love casts out all fear. Because he hated to be afraid of stuff. He always wanted to push himself past that. And I reckon that even just goes to like pushing past the flesh. And I think that's probably part of what made him so powerful, is that he constantly was pushing past his own flesh and his own, I guess, physical desires or physical limitations or even mental limitations. And I think that come with the obsession, man, 100%.
That verse was shared like nearly every week at Jolt. He shared it like all the time. Like perfect love casts out like fear, and I had it nailed into my head by like the end of year 7.
He said one of the scariest things he ever done was starting that Bible study. It's pretty funny, like he reckons he hadn't been hearing from God for months, and then one time he was in the shower and he was like, God, why are you not talking to me? And God said, I've been talking to you, you just haven't been listening. And he said, I want you to start this Bible study. I've been telling you about it for months. And he didn't want to do it. So he decided, fine, I'll do it. I'll get God talking to me again. And so he went and he told the people the people who were going to do the announcement at lunchtime. He said, yeah, there's going to be a Bible study in room 3D, but can you not say anything about who's doing it? Because he was so embarrassed about it. because he was pretty cool apparently, he reckons.
He was a pretty popular guy, but everyone loved that.
And he reckons the announcement came over at lunchtime and it was like, Zach Young is going to be doing a Bible study in D3. Zach Young! And he was so embarrassed, and he reckons he lost like 2/3 of his friends that day. And they were all just like, why are you doing a Bible study, man? That's so gay. And he sat in there like the whole time at lunchtime and no one rocked up until like 5 minutes before the bell. And he's sitting there going, God, you made me do this thing and no one's coming, so this is on you. And then 5 minutes before the bell, these two girls rocked up and they're like, oh, sorry, we're late. We didn't know where it was or something. And he reckons, like on the outside, he was like all casual. He's like, yeah, no worries, come in. You know, we don't really have time to do anything now, but we can just get to know each other. And he reckons inside he was just like, yeah, like a stadium, a crowd cheering in a stadium. Like he was so stoked that like 2 people had rocked up. So is that Bible study still going?
It ran, the one at Heritage, I ran it all the way up until year 12.
Okay.
Not sure what happened after that. There was me and 2 other guys that took over. There was a few people that took over throughout the years, but I think year 11 and 12, it was just me and these 2 other guys who hadn't met Zach, but who were really, really keen to get this Bible study keeping going, because otherwise it was just going to be me. Yeah, and it ran all the way, and I think we put it on to someone else, and I'm not sure what happened after that, but it was running up into 2018, from 2013.
I'm pretty sure the one at Newman too, after he left school, he wanted someone else that was a student to run it.
Yeah.
And that happened. But then I think the school ended up wanting to take it over because it was obviously cranking, like a lot of people were coming and stuff, and then they wanted to control it, and then it just died away because it wasn't organic the way that, you know, he'd done it. Because even when he would do the Bible study there, it wasn't just, oh, Zach's gonna get up and talk. Like, yeah, he would get up and he'd share some things or whatever, but people would be asking questions and curious.
Well, like
and it
a
wasn't just
discussion
like
group.
people with no friends coming too. It was like, you know, people that you would not expect to go to Bible study at school coming. It was
He
pretty
goes,
amazing.
if I had 5 friends, he goes, I remember him saying, I lost 2/3 of my friends. So if I had 5 friends, I had like 1.5 left. And his favourite, he used to do these cooking shows at his place.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah, he used to have people like film him. And he'd be like, welcome to Zach's cooking show. Today we're going to be making cheese on plate. And he would just get like, not even real cheese, like one of those plastic bits of cheese and stick it on a plate and then put it in the microwave.
Or he'd get the egg and he'd like crack it on his head like this, and it'd be like dripping down his face, and it's just like on a normal plate, and the
I remember
egg's just
getting all
like
like
flapping around.
the pots and pans out and doing like the intro to it as well. Like you get the wooden spoons and like drum along. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. He did everything like with 100%. Do you remember when we played Monopoly and it went for 5 days?
Yeah.
And we had to envelope it? And then he was working on us, and he was like trying to make it alliances. Even like he'd be texting me and like, come on please, like trying to, I'll give you this one if you give me that one.
I remember I was driving away from his place after that game, and he was running up the street with his jumper going, I'll give you my jumper if you give me Paul Moore Street.
I remember we were driving away, Ellie and I, and he jumped on the back of the car, and he was like, I'm not getting off until you have an alliance with me. And he's like, I'll die, it's worth it. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's crazy.
So funny. And when he brought home that stray dog,
Oh my
he
God.
brought this like stray dog home and fell in love with it. I don't know what happened to it, but
I don't know. It probably wasn't a stray dog and went home.
I think they found his owner. But
Oh, yeah, he's so funny. Oh man.
he was always bringing strays home, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, you lived there for a bit too, Dan, didn't you?
yeah, it's great. Yeah, and I lived in Zach for a bit.
That place has housed a few people actually, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think me, Dave, Jakob,
Mike
Constantine. What's that?
Mike Chikos' whole family were there for a bit.
Yeah. It It was mad when I lived with him because it was nice to see. Some people they'll just be Christian, you know, when everyone's around and things like that. But he was like that, like all the time. He'd wake up and he'd be praying and he'd be reading his Bible and stuff. And I remember even like it does sound like crazy, and some people don't believe in this stuff, but like there was this point where like I guess we both, and this is when Jake was also as you were saying, like they were challenging each other and stuff, but we all got a bit more serious about our faith and things, and we both started having like, it was weird dreams at first, but then we started feeling like it was physical manifestations of, I guess, spiritual warfare, like demonic things and stuff. And like I remember it happening to me, and then I was too scared to say anything to someone because I thought it would sound crazy. But then I ended up building up the courage and said something to him about it, and he ended up saying, "Oh, same thing's been happening to me," because we used to share a room and we had bunk beds sort of thing, and
You used to have heaps of demonic stuff going on with your mate.
Yeah, constantly. And
He used
I
to be
remember,
like paralysed in his sleep.
Yeah. And I honestly like, if it was one person, it might be sleep paralysis, but it was happening to the both of us. And I remember like being so scared. I actually stopped reading my Bible and I stopped praying because I was terrified, and I thought that'll make it go away. But I remember like he ramped it up even more, man. Like I remember he was telling me, he's like, "Dan, you just got to tell him to go away." Like, and I remember him saying that something was like, he like woke up and he felt like something was like crawling up his legs, and he would literally just tell it to go away and go back to sleep, and it never deterred him at all. And that's what I meant. Like he was just obsessed, constantly, and I felt like every day he was making the same decision that he made in the shower, of like, you know, God, I'm gonna give you my everything. I'm gonna die to myself. You know, my life's all but over. I think even in his testimony he says, you know, we've only got one life. Like, why wouldn't I do it? And I think he understood that, like the sentence of death, it's already been passed down. We can't get rid of it. Like, it's always going to be there. And so dying to yourself, like as hard as it is, like all you have to do is surrender to God and push past that part in your flesh and die to yourself. And that's when he saw all this stuff happen. And I think that's actually what stood him out from everyone else, is he was willing to do that like every day. He was willing to die to himself every day. And I mean, that's what Jesus talks about more than probably anything. I'm pretty sure in the Bible is taking up your cross, dying daily, you know.
What are you guys thinking when he's sharing this? What are you thinking when Dan's sharing this stuff about the demonic?
I reckon it's no wonder that he was getting attacked, because he was doing so much stuff. Like, the devil's not going to try and take down Christians that are doing nothing, you know, and Dan being with him in that room, praying with him and fellowshipping, like, he was, I reckon...
There was something on Zach's
they were
life
just
that
trying to
enemy
stop
saw.
him, And Dan.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and he did stop me, unfortunately.
But then you came back. We've all got our own story.
Yeah, 100%. But it's because what I saw Zach, like what Zach did.
Yeah.
Like,
to keep pushing.
Yeah,
I remember
just
Zach used to say the enemy, I've always remembered it, that Satan's a chihuahua with a megaphone. Like, he sounds really big, but he's actually just this tiny little, like he's got nothing. I always remember that because I used to have demonic experiences, and when Zach was mentoring me, he was just talking at me. He mentoring. He would tell me about this demonic stuff, and I'd tell him, I've experienced that too. And he's like, well, the enemy's just a chihuahua with a megaphone, and you just have to keep running hard towards Jesus. Like, just keep your eyes on him, and the enemy has to flee from that. He can't withstand it. But yeah, I feel when you're just talking about him dying to himself, I think one of the biggest privileges of like being a part of Zach's life was watching that happen.
yeah.
Like, when we first knew him, I feel like he was still like teetering on the edge, like 1 foot in. Yeah, I really want to do this, but this is actually, I've got to give up everything. And watching him from the beginning, there was still that, I really want to party, I've got a lot of friends, I'm really popular, and having to let go of those things, we like got to tangibly see that happen. And I just remember seeing it. I remember him not coming to stuff because he wanted to pray. And I was like, I didn't really get it because I just came to know the Lord, and I'm like, I don't really understand. But Zach, it's like he had an encounter with Jesus he couldn't deny, and denying it meant denying like the creator of the world, and it was deeply sewn into him. So to watch him die to himself daily, it showed me that like we've all got to do that too. And he like skyrocketed, but we can do that. I think that's a incredible lesson from his life, is that there was something in Zach's little short life and restoration of knowing Christ and doing what he called Zach to do. We have a lesson in that. We can do that now, and God's calling us to that right now as the world gets darker, as the world's starting to come to a close, that God's calling us to just step out and obey, to die to ourselves daily. Like there's still a lesson in that, like, which is amazing.
I feel like you got something to add into this, even though you weren't part of that you guys all kind of have this close memory and knowledge, but then you caught what he had.
Yeah, so like, even when he like died, when I started to hear the stories, like, because it kind of, I guess, happened naturally for me. Like, when I first become a Christian, I went straight to my friend's place and just started talking to him about God, you know, like, that's just what happens. And then like after that, like they talked about, you know, Zach and what he used to do and go out and pray, and I guess that encouraged me even more, you know, to go out and to pray for people. And like that is true. Like as they said, like a lot of like self like can come in between that, you know, like as Jacayla was talking about, like all of his friends and partying and his social life, and like to want to go and do that's like yourself wanting to go and to deny that would have been so hard, even for like a young person. No young person like thinks that way. Like even when we was younger, like, and I'm looking back on that, like even seeing like young people like full on for the Lord and like going out and evangelizing, like you don't see that a lot, you know, like.
And I must say, I saw a lot of that from young people after his death, and a lot of it came from people who were at the Bible study, and they went from either growing up in a Christian home but, you know, only being dragged along to church because their parents were, or people who had no affiliation with Christianity beforehand, maybe a little bit of affiliation through the school or through, but no interest. And then there was just this boom of young people for the next however many years it was, just like going out into the public and speaking about Jesus to people and praying for random strangers on the street. And it was just this, it was like Port for a while was on fire with these Jesus loving young people, and I believe it was a result of Zach's life and death, and the way that he lived Jesus all the way up to his death. From the moment he accepted Jesus, it was Jesus all the way up into his death.
You got to share your first prophecy.
With
Zach's mentoring Jacayla, you know.
Do you guys know that Zach mentored me for a bit? But it was a project for What Youth for Christ. And he's like, man, I need to tick this thing off. Can I mentor you? I was like, all right. And so we'd meet in the front room of Kev and Zach's place, and he'd mentor me a bit. It was so funny. Like, it would be like an hour of him telling me stuff. But anyway, and I would go to start saying something, he'd be like, yeah, so anyway. And then I'm like, all right, cool. I think he didn't have a lot of time to talk with Daryl, so he's like, I'm going to take it out on you. I got stuff to say. But I remember he actually taught me prophecy, and he actually taught me more than I think I learned in church. Not anything against the church, but it's like, I think that the fire is caught, it's not taught. And so when you catch something and you pass it on, that's when you're alight. That's when like that refining fire comes in and you take it with you whenever you go. But he taught me, we were sitting there and he's like, okay, have you ever prophesied over anyone? I was like, no, I've never done that. And he's like, all right, you're just going to sit there and you're going to ask God to give me a word for me. And I'm like, all right. And so he gave me a word. He told me to close my eyes and talk to Jesus and get a word. And I actually remember getting like a rocket ship, and this rocket ship left the ground. There was so much fire. It was actually almost completely on fire. And it went really fast into the sky and then it disappeared. And that's why I said to Zach, I'm like, that's what I get. And after he died and just reflection, I definitely think that was actually that last year of Zach's life, that God was setting him up to do some really significant things on this earth and in our lives. And that he was a burning fire, like, yeah, whenever you were around him, it warmed you up, like you caught light. So that was pretty significant for me to look back and see, wow, God is real. God says things and they happen. And so, yeah, he definitely was a rocket, that's for sure.
I think one of the things about Zach is how quick he picks stuff up.
Yeah.
Like he had this like channel vision where when he was focused on something, he wouldn't stop until he completed it successfully. You know, like when he fell off the skateboard down Matthew Flynn, he's like, nah, I'm getting back on. You know, it won't conquer me. You know, and like I'd been going to church all my life, man, and I started doing this School of the Spirit with Zach, and he'd literally just become a Christian, really. Like he'd heard about it, but he'd only really just had his big God encounter, and he left me in his tracks. Like he just blew straight past me, and his mentor with Christian surfers, Dave Malvin, also said that at his funeral. Like he just left him behind. You know, he would come to Dave for mentoring and end up mentoring Dave. Dave would go away feeling more mentored than Zach. And like surfing as well, like he was a bodyboarder nearly all of his life until right at the end when he started surfing, and he just picked up a surfboard, and I just remember watching him just going, who surfs, like who picks up a surfboard and just surfs like that straight up? Like he just picked it up so quick, picked up his faith quick, he picked up friends quick. It was like, he was just a charger, eh? And I think that momentum that he had, like Jacala said, with the rocket ship blasting off, like in a way, like he did leave us in his tracks, but he also left us a path to follow, you know, like, and it might look like with that big explosion and all the flames and, you know, him going away, that like, you know, that was just him and it's all over, like, but the truth is, like, he just had less, the truth is he just had less time than us, that's all. And I think he kind of knew it. I remember one time I was driving with him in the car, and I said to him, because he really liked this girl, I won't say who it is, but he liked this chick, and she didn't like him back. and they'd already had that conversation. And I remember saying to him, like, so what's going on with her? Like, any luck, or is it still a no-go? And he's like, I've actually been praying about it lately, Jake, and I think I'm going to die young. And I don't think I'm going to have a wife and kids. And I said to him, Zach, I started rebuking it. And I was like, no, that's from the devil, you know, like, you're going to have a wife and kids. You're going to be an amazing dad, an amazing granddad and uncle. But the truth was he did die young, and he did. And because he only had that small amount of time of being a Christian before he died, I think God really blessed his heart and his passion, and God just allowed him to skyrocket forward and leave a path of inspiration for us to follow.
I was going to say on what you said, Jake. Do you remember that time we were praying at your house, Lukey?
Yeah.
And he said, like,
yeah, that was the word that I had for him. Like,
when he, you say what you were going to say.
Oh, I remember that exact night was me, Dan, Sherman, and Zach were all praying at our house, and it was just prophecy the whole night. It was just like what we see for each other in God. And I remember I got to Zach, and I'd had like all these crazy visions for Sherman and Dan, and just like everything that was happening in our community, and then when it came to Zach, I just like laid my hands on him. It was just like this picture of white straight away, And I like stayed there and like we prayed for probably like 4 hours that night. And I stayed there for like a good 20 minutes and I just like kept on seeing white, peace. And then I said to him at the end, I said, man, I don't see a future for you, but I see peace and happiness and that's all I can see. I said, I don't see anymore. And that's like, and like everything that, like you're saying with the rocket ship and you're saying about what you said, Jake, it's like, he had that from the get-go. And like, I didn't even know what Jake's story until now, but like, he never shared anything like that with me, but it was like we had all these things of him passing young, but also like what Jake said, like he left that example for us from the get-go, like this childlike faith that like, as I said before, is infectious and like that we can still carry forward even now. Yeah.
I remember the night before Zach died, he called me on the phone and I think he was playing video games with someone at Kev's place. And I don't know, he's never invited me to play video games in my life. And he's like, hey, you've got to come play this video game. I was like, I've got no interest in playing whatever you're playing. And he's like, no, I really think you should come. Come on. Like he was talking about how they were heading off to Melbourne or something. They had some Christian servers. I'm not going to see you for a while. Like, just come play some video games. And I was like, no, that's okay. And I was like, but you have fun, man. And then I was like, all right, see ya. And we said goodbye. And like 2 seconds later, he calls me back again. And I was like, Zach, I'm not coming to play video games, bro. And he's like, no, I just want to tell you I love you. And I was like, what? And I was like, oh, that's nice, Zach. And he's like, yeah, I really appreciate you being my sister. Like, I just really love you. And I was like, oh.
I got the same thing on the day.
Love you too, man. Wow.
Like the same thing on the day that he left to go up to Coffs. I went around to say hello and I was like, oh no, I'm leaving. I've got my P's and going now. I was like, okay, cool, man. It was like this big hug, love you, bro. I'll see you soon. Like,
yeah.
That was the same sort of thing that day.
Yeah.
It was just like,
No, it wasn't usual.
But
no,
you wish you went and played video games with him now.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And we like waving and jumping.
And like
in the car.
tied him to the couch and not let him go surfing.
I'm not going surfing.
But I think God had a plan. Maybe the shark was going to walk him. I got a plan, so yeah. I've been thinking the last week about why was Zach so special? And I just got this image in my mind of evangelist camp. I don't know, I can't remember who was on that, but I know you were at evangelist camp, and it was that year. And I just remember Zach lying on the floor for hours. Just like, and I remember him giggling at some points and like shaking, and I thought he was pretty wacko for a bit. I remember falling in the spirit, but something about Zach, his encounter in that moment, and I was remembering it this last week, is like, he was really in love with Jesus. Like, he was truly infatuated with Jesus Christ. It wasn't that he loved evangelism, it wasn't that he loved prophecy, it wasn't that he loved like all these gifts and like being the center of attention, but like he just fell in love with Jesus Christ himself. And like that's it. Like it's the simplicity of the gospel.
Yeah.
Just fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like nothing crazy made Zach special. Like he had some friends, there's lots of popular people in the world, but Zach fell in love with Jesus and that just became like everything to him. And that was contagious.
Yeah.
And I was reading Zechariah as well, and in Zechariah it talks about the kingdom of God. And he said, and then I'll build a wall of fire around them. And in the midst of the fire will be my glory. And I thought about Zach because I feel like he crossed that threshold over that fire into his glory. And when you cross through fire, you get burnt. And his flesh got burnt away, and he started living by the Spirit, and like in the midst of God's glory, like the glory was on Zach. Like there was something about his face even, like he just really, I don't know, it's hard to put your finger on, but then you're like, oh, that's right, it's Jesus. And I just love that.
100%.
I love that.
Amity, you want to share your story a little? I feel like you're almost living Zach's story in slow motion.
Actually, it's funny because he gave his all to God. I could really see that. And that really impacted me so much. And I think I caught that infectious, not a disease, but whatever, the infectious, like the love and that love for God. And I think I, along with so many people, caught that. It's funny though, because he did die young, and I remember sometimes I'd think, what if I died young? And I kind of always was thinking, like, what if is my life going to count? But at that stage, like, I was a healthy teenage girl. I did a bit of just leisure bodyboarding myself, not anything big or anything, and I would swim and bike ride, and I was very active. And it wasn't until I finished school, and I was 19 actually, which is interesting because Zach was around 19 at the time that he died. And it was 19 when I started getting really sick. And, you know, we prayed for a miracle, and we still pray for a miracle. And and things started to go pear-shaped, and then I ended up getting diagnosed just at the right minute before I almost, my body was shutting down because I wasn't getting nutrition. And I almost, my family's almost lost me multiple times, and it's kind of scary to think. There's been so many times that complications has happened and I've nearly gone, so when is the next time? And it's funny because how this whole, how me being here came to be today and stuff. It was the night before Jaquela, I saw Jaquela at church, and I'd just been at an agricultural camp, and I felt like I couldn't, and I've been to that agriculture camp so much, and I felt like I couldn't actually do it as good as I used to be able to. I ended up in hospital, and my intestines are slowing down again, which basically means that if they shut down and they don't go back in, I have to go on a special treatment that kind of has a 3-year lifespan. And I remember talking to Mum about it and crying, and just like, and I remember I said, I feel like I'm gonna go and I'm gonna leave a mess behind me, and there's just gonna be so much of a mess, and people are gonna be angry at God, and people are gonna be upset. And then Mum literally said, "Did Zach leave a mess?" Which is very, it cut me, because it was like, no, he didn't. And it's like, there was so much good that came from it. We had a really good conversation, because me and my mum, we have an interesting relationship where I was always very independent, and I would talk to her sometimes and sometimes wouldn't, and it was the first time I guess I got to sit down and just open up for real with her. Next day, go to church, Kayla's there, and everyone's happy to see me at the church because I was in a bad way a couple of weeks before, and they knew about it. Mum was crying at church apparently, and everyone prayed and made it to church, and Jaquela and a group of people came and prayed, and they asked me, what do you want? Do you want healing? And then I just realized, well, I just want what God wants, because that's kind of what Zach said. He just wanted what God wanted, whatever brought more glory, whether it be healing or not. Zach could have miraculously, like this shark could have miraculously, like, you know, he could have survived miraculously, but he didn't. And there was glory that came from that. And so Zach coming up in conversation a lot lately with my health and that chance of having a similar future. But using that, like, and letting, not even me using it, but God using my situation to touch people in a way that other people can't. And I just feel like that has really made me, you know, the time is ticking. I really want to just get back to the real goal, which is Christ and Jesus and that love and that fire that I had, you know, shortly after Zach died. And that's just something that, yeah.
I sometimes think I kind of wish I was there when it happened, because I just think I don't blame anyone for what happened, but like I just think, like, what if I got to him first? What if I had my leg rope? What if I wrapped his legs up?
You're still trying to save him. Guy, you're a hoot.
I just think, like, things could have been different, you know, like, I don't know, it might just be the hero in me.
Doing this whole project, I'm like, what if I've got 1 year? Like, what if that's it?
Yeah.
I'm like,
I think a lot of, you know, my story of coming to Christ was impacted by so many people that modelled Christ for me, and Zach was a massive part of that. Zach barely knew me. There was like 50 people coming to this Bible study, and like he was just so invested in people. I really loved that, and he was so infectious.
does anybody else think that they would love to love Jesus more, but they don't?
I reckon I go through like little sporadic periods where like I'll go really serious about it and then drop away a bit. Yeah. I actually feel like sometimes maybe like even, it might even just be a selfish thing, but you know, sometimes you can think like, oh, like Zach loved Jesus so much and like, you know, died to himself every day, and it's like you can feel like, oh, I'm not like living up to that. But yeah, I guess I have to remind myself all the time that yeah, it's not even about Zach anyways, it's about Jesus. Like, we're meant to be living up to Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely been times where I feel like my relationship with God's inadequate compared to a lot of other people. You look at people and you go, far out, like, how come it's not like that for me? Yeah, I find that can be quite disheartening. Yeah, I'm still trying to get my feet around it with it all again, you know, like sort of coming back to it. And Dan's been probably the biggest encouragement for me lately. Just seeing him on fire, you know, like I would always think about it, you know, and like I do get that question in my head, like if I died now, where would I end up, you know? But yeah, because you know, Dan, he lives so far away, but we hang out almost, I don't know, every other day, and just sort of seeing him progress, it like really encouraged me. I actually found myself praying again where I wasn't praying before, and it wasn't like I sort of came to the realization a year or so ago, you know, like I actually still believe in God. You know, it's just sort of like I prefer my life sort of thing a bit more than what the life God's got to offer, because the life what God's got to offer seems rocky when you look at it from afar. And sometimes just doing what you want to do, you're sort of in like a big valley, I guess. It's like you got all this wind around you, but you sort of feel safe. And yeah, just that's sort of like, you know, when I first became a Christian, Zach would have definitely been a big part of it. And coming back into it, I feel like Dan's my new big part. He's like, feel that void. That's not really the right thing, because that void should be filled with Jesus, but, you know, as my...
I get it. It's discipleship.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, a mentor, or I don't know. Yeah.
Cool thing. I think that you just saying that, it makes me realise that we actually can't love Jesus the way he truly wants to be loved, in the sense that you can put it all in, and Zach probably did put everything he possibly could, but I think more of it is actually just receiving his love and being like, oh, I'm just receiving your love, Jesus. Like, that's where I'm sitting, because if there's anything in you that says my love isn't inadequate, you know, to love you, Jesus, that's actually the enemy going, oh, look at you, you're not inadequate, like you're inadequate. You can't even love Jesus. Well, that's true. You just need to receive his love, because he died for you to set you free into relationship with the Father. Like, I think the enemy is just really out to get God's people to convince us that we can't do it, we're not good enough, just forget about this Christian walk. But you just need to receive his love and live out of that. Like, walk through the narrow gate just one step at a time. Like, I think Zach did that, he just did it faster. Like none of us are ever going to be Zach, but we're all God's children who can receive His love.
It's not like a checkbook, you got to tick off all the things
Yeah.
before you're like, all right, I'm actually good to have Jesus in my life now.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, he sort of just says, come, like, he just wants you to
100%.
come to him and everything else will work itself out.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, that's what I've sort of come to realise as
Yeah.
well lately, because it's just like, well, like, everything I'm doing
Yeah.
isn't,
It's not enough, so
yeah,
just
but
lay it
it's
down.
just like, but
Yeah.
that doesn't matter, like, it will work
Yeah.
itself out.
It's like going to a big banquet and there's like a big long table. You just got to bring what you have to the table. Like, Lord, this is just what I got. It's actually kind of not anything. Like, I'm just like this sinful nothing, but here I am. I'm going to lay it at the table. And
Put your sausage rolls down with all the
Yeah.
other 50 plates of sausage rolls.
it's like, oh no, oh man, not that again. Yeah, your Doritos and dip. That's all I had, man. Your Pepsi. But like, that's all you've got. It's Him. He's the one who's inviting you to the banquet. He's actually the host of it. He's going to make something happen. He's supernatural. Like, you just got to bring what you have and not be convinced otherwise that you can't.
Like His love was like freely given, not earned. Like
Yeah.
it was like He gave His life for us, not like it was given to us. It was never something that we said, oh, can I buy that? Oh, can I have a bit of that? It's like,
Go
here
to
it
an
is.
ultra marathon.
Yeah, there's like nothing you can do. Like you said before, nothing's ever going to be in check, ever.
Yeah.
I've come to realise that for myself, man. Like I feel so far from God, but at the same time, it's like I know that I'm not, because it's like it's just the one step, it's just the turn. It's just like,
Yeah.
here I am. I don't have anything. Here it is for you.
It's like the enemy's telling you that you're not, it's just like, get out of my way. You know, like, because I guess like that's what Jesus says, right? Like, it's just like, yeah, get behind me. It's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't like, doesn't seem like it's Satan. It just seems like a thought, like, oh, I'm not good enough. But it is. It's not. You know, if Satan wasn't there, I'm sure that thought wouldn't be in your head at all. Like, you'd be like, oh yeah, right, no worries.
Yeah, bro.
Jump into it. Let's go.
I feel like, you know, no one will ever be Zach, but that's because he's Zach. He's an individual person and God had a story for him, and He has a story for each and every one of us, and no one will be us. And I think that's the beauty of God. He values all of His children.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that no one's going to be like Zach.
Yeah.
You know, no one's going to have the same love for God Zach had, but that's not what God wants. Like, God just, he just wants us to have the same fire as Zach, you know, like, same
You want
Jesus.
another Zach, you would have just made a world of Zach.
Dude, that would be so gnarly. I don't want to be there. That'd be
Worst
amazing.
ADHD world.
Imagine.